So my name's Sharon and I lived in St Basils in the 90s. The day before I was due to start college, having left school at 16, it was a Sunday night and there was a fallout in my house and I ended up what we would call now sofa surfing. So I stayed at my friend's house across the way. Although I was in a difficult situation and I didn't think it would be homelessness, I did stay at my friend's house, and then in the morning I went home because I was adamant I was going to college. So I went home and I realised that my things were packed up, and I kind of took that as the sign that you no longer live here, so to speak. When I got back to my friend's house, I literally was moving black bags over to my friend's, and I stayed there for a number of months, and she was so generous. And I remember not knowing what to do, and I went and got a cleaning job, and then following on from that, obviously it wasn't going to work long term, and I ended up I did spend one night sleeping rough, and I always say I was never resilient enough to do it for much longer than that. But I found myself going to the Link, which was in the city centre, and I was scared. I had all this perception of what living in a hostel would look like. I thought I'd get robbed and beat up. And I remember walking in and there was someone there called Maxie Hales, who is now, I know Maxie to be a really big community activist in the city. And I walked in and he looked at me, and I must have looked terrified, and he said, "It's okay, sweetheart, you're going to be okay." And from that point, he made lots of phone calls, asked me lots of questions, filled in lots of paperwork, and then off I went to Carol Gethin. So while I was at Carol Gethin, I made a lot of friends in there. So it was such a warm environment. I had my own little flatlet. I had to get my own electric. The staff were kind of like the in-between of being authority figures, but also the role models. When I was at Carol Gethin, life was relatively good for us. You know, we had our signed on, and some of us worked in nightclubs and stuff like that, so it was relatively good. And there are some members of staff that I'll always remember for different things. So Elaine, and even people that I talk to now, we talk about Elaine, because Elaine used to come round and ring the buzzer at midnight to make sure everybody was in, and she'd always say, "No night," and we'd all say, "No night, Elaine." So we'd always remember that. Dawn was always kind of the one, when she was on, we'd want to sit in the office and chat to her. There was other ones that were like the ones that we just wouldn't mess with and would tell it as it is and tell us off. But actually, being in that environment with St Basils, having our own little flatlet, actually grounded me for life, because it meant that I had to learn about budgeting very quickly. I almost knew how to run a household very quickly. We all used to cook for each other, we'd borrow seasoning off each other. We were kind of a real unit. I always say this, and I think the first time I said it on stage, and Jean Templeton looked at me in absolute horror when I said that St Basils didn't support me. But what I meant was St Basils didn't support me, they invested in me, and that was a huge difference. And actually that grounding that I got from back then is a huge contributory factor to who I am now, what I do now, what I stand for, my morals, my principles, and all that form of grounding. So that's hugely, hugely important to me, and I will forever, ever, ever be indebted to St Basils.